He called her his boring little wife. He flaunted his young mistress in the city's most expensive restaurants, demanding a divorce to secure what he believed was his empire. He thought he was tossing her aside with nothing but a check and a useless apartment. What he didn't know was that his own father, watching from the shadows of his illness, saw everything. The day of the will reading Arthur Grayson expected to gain a kingdom. He didn't realize he'd just handed the keys, the crown, and his entire future to the very woman he'd so brutally betrayed. This is the story of how a single signature turned a forgotten wife into the most powerful woman he'd ever know. The Grayson family compound in the Hamptons wasn't a home. It was a statement. A sprawling 10-acre behemoth of glass and stone that stared defiantly at the Atlantic. It was here that Eleanora Grayson, Ellie, spent most of her time not in the main house with its cold museum-like silence, but in the guest house tending to her father-in-law, Julian Grayson Sr. Julian, the patriarch and founder of Grayson Holdings, a global logistics empire, was a shadow of the titan he had been. A severe stroke had confined him to a wheelchair, his sharp tongue muted. But his eyes were still as sharp as shards of ice. And those eyes followed Ellie with a warmth that was entirely absent in his son Arthur. Arthur Grayson. Ellie's husband of 12 years was a man carved from polished granite. Handsome, ruthless, and utterly absorbed by his own ambition. He saw Ellie as a suitable wife, quiet, elegant, and most importantly, invisible. She ran his homes, organized his charities, and provided a stable, boring backdrop for his dazzling life. "You're spending another evening with him?" Arthur scoffed, adjusting the cuffs of his bespoke Brioni suit. He was already halfway out the door. "Ellie, he has a team of private nurses from Johns Hopkins. You don't need to be reading him poetry." "He asked for me," Ellie said softly, not looking up from the tray of tea she was preparing. "He likes the Tempest. He likes to keep you occupied, so you don't notice I'm gone," Arthur muttered, checking his reflection. "I've got a late merger dinner. Don't wait up." He didn't kiss her goodbye. He hadn't really in years. Ellie watched his Rolls-Royce Phantom disappear down the long gravel drive. The merger dinner was a lie. She knew it, and she knew Arthur knew she knew it. The lies had become a suffocating fog. This one had a name. Chloe. Chloe was everything Ellie was not. 24 with a razor-sharp bob and a laugh that echoed in expensive restaurants. She was Arthur's new executive assistant, a position he'd created just for her. Ellie had seen them. A friend had sent a photo. A discreet shot from a table at Per Se of Arthur, laughing his hand possessively on Chloe's back, a flash of a new Cartier bracelet on the girl's wrist. The bracelet Ellie had pointed out for her own anniversary. She took the tea to Julian Sr. in the guest house. The nurse nodded and stepped out. Julian was staring at the ocean, his face grim. Ellie began to read. Her voice was the only sound, smooth and calm, weaving Shakespeare's words into the dusk. After a few minutes, Julian raised a trembling hand. He pointed to his desk. A pen, a notepad. He scribbled his hand, shaking with effort. "He is a fool." Ellie paused, her throat tightening. She placed her hand over his. "It's all right, Julian. I'm fine." He shook his head violently. His eyes burned with a terrible, frustrated fire. He scribbled again, pressing so hard the pen nearly tore the paper. "He will not win." Ellie didn't understand. Win what? The divorce. He hadn't even asked for one yet. She patted his hand, attributing his words to the illness, the anger, the helplessness. "Don't worry about Arthur. Just rest." But Julian gripped her hand with surprising strength. He held her gaze, and in that look Ellie saw a promise. It terrified her because she didn't know what it meant. She only knew that the cold war in her marriage was about to turn blazing hot. That night, Arthur didn't come home at all. Ellie sat in the sterile, silent kitchen of the main house, the clock ticking past 300 a.m. She knew this was the end of something. She just didn't know it was also the beginning. The explosion came 2 weeks later. It was calculated, not passionate. Arthur convened the meeting not at their home, but in a sterile conference room at the offices of Gable and Stone, his high-powered law firm. He sat at the head of a 20-foot mahogany table flanked by 2 lawyers who looked like impeccably dressed sharks. "Eleonora," Arthur began, not a trace of warmth in his voice. "We've had a good run, but we're on different paths now. It's time to be practical." Ellie sat alone, her hands folded in her lap. She had refused to bring her own counsel, a move Arthur's lawyers had privately celebrated. "A different path," she repeated, her voice a low monotone. "Does this path have a name?" Arthur's lawyer. A man named Marcus Shaw cleared his throat. "Mrs. Grayson the Y is not relevant. We are here to discuss a fair and amicable dissolution." "She's 24, Arthur," Ellie said, her eyes locked on her husband. "I've seen the receipts from Bulgari. You're not just practical. You're a cliché." Arthur's face tightened. The mask of civility slipped. "Watch your tone, Ellie. You are in no position to make demands. I am the one with the career. I am the one with the future. You are... well, you're Julian's nurse." The cruelty was designed to make her flinch. She didn't. Shaw slid a thick document across the table. "This is a post-nuptial agreement, which you will sign, followed by the divorce petition. We are prepared to be very generous." Ellie looked at the document. It was a complete severing. She would be waiving all rights to any future assets, specifically any inheritance. "Generous," Ellie said, "is a subjective term." "It's more than generous," Arthur snapped. "You get the Upper East Side apartment. It's paid off. You get a lump sum of $5 million. That's more than you'll ever need. In exchange, you sign this. You agree that the marriage is irretrievably broken, and you make no further claims on my family's assets, namely, Grayson Holdings." He was protecting his inheritance. That was the entire point. He wanted her gone before his father passed, so she couldn't possibly make a claim on the company he was so certain would be his. "He thinks I'm a gold digger." Ellie thought, a bitter wave of irony washing over her. She had spent the last decade saving the family money, running the estates, managing the complex medical care for Julian that Arthur couldn't be bothered with. "And if I don't sign?" Ellie asked. Shaw smiled, a thin, reptilian gesture. "Then we go to court. We will paint a picture of a cold, disinterested wife who spent her husband's money while ignoring him, preferring the company of a senile old man. We will draw this out for years. Your $5 million will evaporate in legal fees. You will get nothing. Arthur, on the other hand, has the resources of Grayson Holdings behind him." It was a lie. Arthur didn't control the company funds. Julian still did. But Ellie knew the threat was real. "He wants me out," she said to Arthur. "Your father. He's why you're doing this now. You're afraid of him." "My father is a vegetable." Arthur slammed his hand on the table, his voice echoing in the silent room. "He doesn't know what day it is. I am doing this because I am done. I want a new life. I want Chloe. And I am willing to pay $5 million to get you out of my way." The silence stretched. Ellie looked at the document. She saw the clause clear as day. waiver of all claims present and future on the Grayson family estate, including any and all inheritance. "Where do I sign?" she asked. Arthur's relief was palpable. He leaned back, the smug superiority returning to his face. He had won. He had gotten rid of his boring wife, secured his inheritance, and was free to start his life with his young, exciting mistress. Ellie picked up the heavy, expensive pen. She signed her name Eleonora Grayson with a steady hand. As she walked out of the building, leaving Arthur and his lawyers to pour champagne, she didn't feel defeated. She felt light. She also thought of Julian's last note to her, scribbled just that morning. "He thinks I am blind, but I see." The divorce was finalized with insulting speed. Arthur was a man on a mission. He wanted every tie to Eleonora severed before his father's inevitable passing. He moved Chloe into the main house in the Hamptons, a move of such breathtaking disrespect that it shocked even the calloused high society of New York. Chloe, for her part, stepped into the role of Lady of the Manor with voracious enthusiasm. She documented her new life on Instagram, sipping champagne on the veranda, posing by the infinity pool, and in a move of ultimate hubris, wearing a vintage diamond necklace that had belonged to Arthur's mother. Ellie, now living in the sterile Upper East Side apartment, saw it all. Friends sent her screenshots outraged on her behalf. Ellie simply deleted them. She had only one focus. She continued to visit Julian Sr. At first, Arthur had tried to bar her. "You're not family anymore," he'd sneered over the phone. Ellie's response was ice. "The nurses report to me, Arthur. I still manage his medical trust. I have for 5 years. If you bar me, I will be forced to file a petition for elder neglect, and I will use the photos of Chloe wearing your mother's pearls while your father's nurses are understaffed. Try me." Arthur backed down, furious. He couldn't risk a public scandal before the company was his. So Ellie continued her visits. The main house was loud now, filled with Chloe's friends' music and parties. Ellie used the service entrance and went straight to the guest house. Julian was fading. The fire in his eyes was dimmer, but he remained lucid. One afternoon, while a loud party raged on the main lawn, Julian gestured weakly for his notepad. He wrote 3 words. "My lawyer, Davies." "Mr. Davies?" Ellie asked, confused. "From Crestview Legal, your estate lawyer." Julian nodded. "He will call you. Trust him. Trust him with what Julian—" But Julian was tired. He closed his eyes. A week later, the call came. Mr. Davies was a kind, elderly man with a voice like dry parchment. He asked Ellie to come to his office in the city. "Julian has made some alterations to his final testament." Davies explained, his fingers steepled. "He did this 6 months ago, just after his stroke. He had me, his personal physician, and a psychiatrist specializing in cognitive function, all present to witness and attest to his soundness of mind. He was, to be quite blunt, brilliant." "Why are you telling me this?" Ellie asked. "Because," Davies said, leaning forward, "you are the sole executor, and you need to be prepared. Julian was a man who planned for every contingency." Ellie left the office with a heavy, sealed manila envelope. Davies's instructions were clear. "Do not open this. Keep it safe. It contains Julian's private directives for you, and only you, to be read after the will is public." Meanwhile, Arthur was living like a king in waiting. He had started summoning Grayson Holdings executives to the Hamptons for strategy sessions, essentially holding court as the heir apparent. He and Chloe were planning a massive celebration of life party to be held after Julian's passing, with catering lists and floral arrangements already being reviewed. He was so consumed with his future triumph that he barely registered the present. He treated the impending death of his father as an administrative hurdle. "He's hanging on, Chloe," he complained one night, swirling his brandy. "It's almost rude." Chloe, draped over him, pouted. "When it's ours, can we sell this old-fashioned guest house? It's depressing. It ruins the view." "When it's mine, my love," Arthur whispered, kissing her, "we can do anything we want." The end came on a cold Tuesday in November. The call came to Ellie at 4:00 a.m. from the head nurse. "He's going, Mrs. Grayson. He's asking for you." Ellie didn't hesitate. She was in her car in 5 minutes, racing through the dark, empty highways to the Hamptons. She used her old service key, bypassing the sleeping main house, and slipped into the guest house. The room was still. The only sound was the faint beep of a heart monitor. Julian's eyes were open, fixed on the door. When he saw her, a faint, almost imperceptible relief softened his features. Arthur was not there. The nurses had called him first, but his phone went straight to voicemail. He and Chloe were in the city at an Avenue private party. Ellie sat by the bed and took Julian's frail hand. It was ice cold. "I'm here, Julian," she whispered, her voice thick. "I'm here." He couldn't speak. He couldn't write. He just held her hand, his thumb weakly stroking her knuckles. They sat like that for an hour. He was the only true family she had known in this cold, monstrously wealthy world. He had been her protector, her friend, her father. As the first grey light of dawn broke over the Atlantic, Julian Grayson Sr. squeezed her hand one last time. And then he was gone. Ellie wept. She wept for the man she'd lost, for the kindness he'd shown her, and for the storm she knew was about to break. She was the one who made the call. She called the funeral home. She called Mr. Davies. And then she called Arthur. He picked up on the 4th ring, his voice thick with sleep and annoyance. "Ellie, what the hell do you want?" He's gone." "Arthur," Ellie said, her voice flat and empty. "Your father passed away 10 minutes ago." The line was silent. Ellie heard muffled movement, then Chloe's voice. "What? What is it? My father." Arthur said, his voice suddenly sharp alert. "He's dead." He wasn't sad. He was activated. "I'll be there in 2 hours. Don't touch anything." He hung up. Ellie stood up and looked at the man who had been her only ally. "I'll do what you asked, Julian." She promised the silent room. "I'll trust Mr. Davies." When Arthur and Chloe arrived, they were dressed in tactical, expensive-looking black. Arthur stormed into the guest house, looked at his father's body, and then immediately turned to Ellie. "You need to leave," he said. "Now." "Arthur, you are not family. You have no right to be here. The apartment is yours. The money is in your account. We are done. Get off my property." Chloe was standing in the doorway. Her arms crossed, a look of pure, triumphant malice on her face. "You heard him. This is our house now." Ellie looked from Arthur's cold, arrogant face to Chloe's greedy one. She didn't say a word. She just nodded, walked past them and out of the guest house for the last time. As she drove away, she saw Arthur on the phone, already barking orders, assembling his kingdom. He was ecstatic. He had no idea he was already a ghost haunting a house that would never be his. The day of the will reading was a masterpiece of corporate theatre. Davies of Crestview Legal had summoned the key parties to the firm's main boardroom, a chamber on the 60th floor overlooking Central Park. The air was thick with tension, and the smell of old money. Arthur arrived precisely on time, dressed in a somber, custom-tailored dark suit. He looked every bit the new CEO, grave, powerful, and in control. Chloe was not with him. Davies had explicitly stated family and named beneficiaries only. Arthur was annoyed, but assumed it was a formality. He was surprised to see Eleonora. She was seated at the far end of the table, next to a representative from Deloitte, the accounting firm that handled the Grayson estate. She wore a simple, elegant, dark grey dress. She looked whole and out of place, and Arthur gave her a dismissive sneer. "Ellie, I'm surprised you came," he said, taking the seat at the head of the table, the seat his father always took. "There's nothing for you here. I thought I made that clear. Davies invited me." "Arthur," she replied, her voice quiet. "A formality," Arthur waved. "My father probably left you a painting or some furniture from the apartment. Don't worry, I won't contest it." Mr. Davies entered, carrying a single thick leather-bound document. "Good morning. We are here to read the last will and testament of Julian Grayson Sr. As he requested, this will be swift. His instructions were specific." Davies put on his glasses. "I'll skip the preamble and standard bequests to charities and household staff. Which brings us to Article 4, the disposition of the primary estate." Arthur leaned forward, tapping his gold Mont Blanc pen on the table. This was it. Article 4A. Davies read his voice dry. "To my son, Arthur Grayson. I have watched him for 40 years. I have seen him use the privilege I gave him not as a tool for creation, but as a weapon for his own vanity." Arthur's pen stopped tapping. His face paled slightly. "What is this?" Davies continued. "He values nothing and no one. He seeks to acquire, not to build. He believes loyalty is a transaction. He is in all ways a profound disappointment to me and to his mother's memory. Therefore, I leave my son Arthur the sum of $25,000 to be paid from the estate. This is the same amount I was given when I started my first business. Perhaps he can finally learn to build something of his own." The room was absolutely silent. Ellie's hands, which had been in her lap, gripped the edge of the table. Arthur was frozen. His face was a mask of disbelief, his jaw working silently. What? That's a joke. He's senile. That's a typo." "I assure you, Mr. Grayson, it is not," Davies said. "As I mentioned, Julian's mental capacity was certified by a board of medical professionals at the time of signing." Then who?" Arthur's voice was a strained whisper. "The company. Who gets the company?" Davies turned the page. Article 4B. All the rest residue and remainder of my estate, both real and personal, including all stocks, bonds, properties, and my entire controlling interest, 51% of Grayson Holdings. I leave to the only person who has demonstrated the integrity, compassion, and intelligence worthy of my legacy." Davies looked up over his glasses directly at Eleonora. "I leave everything to my beloved daughter-in-law, Eleonora Grayson." If the room had been silent before, it was now a vacuum. Arthur made a choked gasp, as if he'd been punched in the stomach. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." He shot to his feet, his chair screeching back and scraping the floor. "You," he roared, pointing a shaking finger at Ellie. "You did this! You poisoned him against me! You gold-digging bitch!" "Mr. Grayson, I must ask you to sit down," Mr. Davies said calmly. "She manipulated a sick old man." Arthur was screaming now, his face a blotchy, furious red. "I'll fight this. I will drag this through every court in New York. You'll never see a dime. That company is mine." "You will find that very difficult, Arthur," Davies said, his voice hardening. "Because your father was meticulous. Article 5, the no contest clause." Davies read on. "Should any beneficiary, including my son Arthur, contest this will or any of its provisions, their bequest in his case, the 25,000 shall be revoked, and they shall be treated as if they had predeceased me, receiving nothing." Arthur stared, mouth agape. He was trapped. He could take the insulting $25,000, or he could fight and get absolutely nothing. "Furthermore," Davies continued, "Julian activated a secondary provision upon his death. He commissioned a full independent forensic audit of Grayson Holdings, conducted by Deloitte." He nodded to the man beside Ellie, "which was to be delivered to the new executor. That executor, as of this morning, is Ms. Eleonora Grayson." The man from Deloitte slid a 500-page bound report across the table to Ellie. "An audit." Arthur said, his voice suddenly small. The rage was vanishing, replaced by a cold, visible dread. "Indeed," Davies said. "It seems Julian was concerned about discrepancies in the executive expense accounts, the acquisition funds, particularly a new shell corporation set up to acquire a logistics consultant based in the Cayman Islands." Arthur visibly swayed. He knew exactly what that was. It was the shell company he'd created to siphon funds to Chloe. He looked at Ellie. She wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the report. Her face was pale, but set like marble. She wasn't a boring little wife. She was an executioner. "This is illegal," Arthur stammered. This, Mr. Davies said, closing the will, "is binding. Eleonora Grayson is, as of 9:00 a.m. this morning, the majority shareholder and chairman of the board of Grayson Holdings. The locks on the Hamptons estate have been changed. The locks on your father's penthouse, which is now Miss Grayson's, have been changed. Your corporate accounts have been frozen pending the results of this audit." Arthur stumbled backward, grabbing the edge of the table for support. He had lost everything. The house, the company, the money. He had divorced his wife for nothing, signing away any claim he might have had, only to have her inherit the very kingdom he'd coveted. "You're nothing," he whispered at Ellie, his voice cracking. "You're a nothing. You can't run a company." Ellie finally looked at him. Her eyes weren't angry. They were clear. "You're right, Arthur," she said, her voice steady. "I don't know how to run your company, but I'm about to learn how to run my company. And the first order of business," she said, tapping the audit report, "is cleaning house. Security will meet you downstairs to collect your building pass and company car keys." She stood up. "Mr. Davies." "Mr. Harris, thank you. We have a lot of work to do." She walked out of the room, the Deloitte representative at her side, leaving Arthur Grayson alone in the boardroom, a $25,000 check sitting on the table in front of him, the only remnant of $1 billion empire he had just lost. Arthur Grayson did not stumble out of the Crestview legal building. He walked. He walked with the same rigid, arrogant posture he had used his entire life, his shoulders back, his jaw set. But inside, a vital support strut had been kicked away. He was a skyscraper, collapsing in on itself, maintaining its facade for just a few moments before the inevitable dusty implosion. The elevator ride down from the 60th floor was a silent torture chamber. The mirrored walls showed him a man he almost recognized, expensive suit, silk tie, a face pale and slick with a sweat he refused to acknowledge. He felt the phantom weight of his Mont Blanc pen in his hand, the one he had been tapping in triumph just 30 minutes earlier, $25,000. The number was an absurdity, a joke, a typo. It was the cost of the watch on his wrist. He was senile. Arthur thought, his mind racing, grabbing for any piece of driftwood in the flood. Davies is in on it. They conspired. Ellie, that quiet, mousy little... She manipulated him. She poisoned a sick old man. The elevator doors opened to the grand marble lobby. The air was cool. He walked past the security desk, his footsteps echoing too loudly. "Have a good day, Mr. Grayson," the guard said, smiling. Arthur flinched. The man's casual, respectful tone felt like a razor blade. He doesn't know. He's looking at a dead man. He pushed through the revolving glass doors onto the bustling sidewalk of Central Park South. The city, his city, assaulted him. The roar of buses, the reek of exhaust, the chattering of tourists. It was all suddenly vulgar and deafening. He had always moved through this noise in the climate-controlled, silent cabin of a Rolls-Royce. He pulled out his phone. His thumb hovered over the app for his private car service. He pressed it. He requested a pickup. A red banner appeared at the top of the screen. Account hold. Payment method invalid. His blood ran cold. She wouldn't. Not already. He tried again. Account hold. It wasn't a mistake. It was a message. Frozen. He saw a flash of his own reflection in the dark screen. The panic was visible now, creeping into his eyes. He had no car. "Taxi!" he yelled, his voice cracking. Arthur Grayson was hailing a yellow cab like a commuter. One swerved to the curb. He yanked the door open and fell into the back seat. The plastic partition was scuffed, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and cheap strawberry air freshener. "Where to, Mac?" the driver asked, not looking back. "The St. Regis." Arthur snapped the name of the hotel, a comfort, a piece of his old life. "And hurry up." As the cab lurched into traffic, Arthur's mind was a whirlwind of frantic narcissistic rage. This was a temporary setback, a grotesque, insulting error. He would call his lawyers, not that traitor Davies. He would contest the will. He would... The no contest clause. His father's voice, cold and final, read by Davies. "They shall be treated as if they had predeceased me, receiving nothing." He was trapped. He could fight and get nothing, or swallow his pride and accept the $25,000. He had been so comprehensively outmaneuvered, it stole his breath. The full, suffocating weight of his father's contempt, a contempt he had always mistaken for gruff approval, was crushing him. Julian hadn't just disinherited him. He had neutered him. And Ellie. He had handed her the knife himself, the divorce, the post-nup. He had forced her to sign away her claims, thinking he was protecting his inheritance from her. He never, in his wildest, most arrogant nightmares, considered that she would be the inheritance. He had meticulously, legally and publicly, severed his own connection to the Grayson fortune, leaving her as the sole, clean, uncontestable heir. He had divorced the richest woman in New York to marry a 24-year-old assistant. The cab pulled up to the magnificent gilded entrance of the St. Regis. The doorman, recognizing Arthur, rushed to open the door. "Welcome back, Mr. Grayson." "Just wait," Arthur said to the cab driver, fumbling for his wallet. He pulled out $100 bill. "Keep it." He needed the gesture. He needed to feel for one more second like a man who could throw money away. He walked into the lobby. The scent of fresh-cut lilies and old money, the St. Regis scent, filled his lungs. The discreet plush quiet of the King Cole Bar. The soft, classical music. This was his world. This was control. He felt his breathing steady. He took the private elevator to the presidential suite. He and Chloe had been staying here for a week, celebrating their new beginning in anticipation of this very day. The bill was astronomical. It was all on the corporate account. He slid the keycard. The door opened with a heavy, satisfying snick. "Arthur." "Is that you, baby?" Chloe's voice trilled from the living room. He walked in. The suite was a war zone of consumerism. Shopping bags from Bergdorf Goodman and Saks Fifth Avenue were piled on the antique settees. Empty blue boxes from Tiffany & Co. and red boxes from Cartier littered the coffee table. An open bottle of Dom Perignon was sweating in a silver bucket, 2 glasses half full. Chloe herself was standing by the window wearing a new silk robe, her phone to her ear. "He's here! He's here!" she squealed into the phone. "Gotta go, Tiffany. The king has returned." She hung up and bounded toward him, throwing her arms around his neck. "So," she demanded, her eyes glittering with a frightening manic greed, "did we get it? Are we officially the king and queen? Tell me everything. Tell me how much we own." Arthur didn't move. He couldn't embrace her. His arms felt like lead. Her perfume, the one he'd bought her, Baccarat Rouge 540, was suddenly cloying, suffocating. "Arthur." Her smile faltered. She pulled back, her perfectly sculpted brows drawing together. "What's wrong? You look pale. Did it not? Was it less than you thought?" "He gave it to her," Arthur said. His voice was a hollow rasp, unrecognizable to his own ears. Chloe laughed, a sharp, nervous sound. "Gave what to who? Don't be all dramatic. Did he leave some sentimental crap to the staff?" "Who cares? Just tell me our number." "He gave it all to her," Arthur said, meeting her eyes. "Everything. The company, the houses, the penthouse, the stock, all of it." Chloe stared. The smile didn't fade. It froze a grotesque mask of joy. What do you mean? Who is her?" "Ellie," he whispered. "He gave everything to Ellie." The silence in the room was absolute. Chloe's face for a split second was blank. Arthur could literally see the calculations firing behind her eyes, the numbers spinning, the future she had built in her head, dissolving like sugar in water. Then her face contorted. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't sympathy. It was pure, unadulterated, sulphurous rage. "You're joking," she hissed, her voice dropping to a terrifying low register. "This is a test. This is some sick rich guy test. You're lying to me." "I'm not lying, Chloe," he said, his own desperation rising. He needed her. He was alone. He left me $25,000. He left her the entire billion-dollar estate. Smack. Her hand cracked across his face. The force of it shocked him into silence. The sting of her rings, the ones he'd paid for, brought tears to his eyes. "You bastard!" she shrieked, her voice no longer a playful trill, but a raw, guttural scream. "You pathetic bastard! You lied to me." "I didn't lie," he shouted back, the sting on his cheek igniting his own fury. "I didn't know. How could I know? You told me you were the heir. You told me it was a done deal. You told me she was a nobody, a boring little wife. Your words. You told me she was getting nothing. She was pacing now, grabbing her hair, a caged animal. That mouse, that shadow, she beat you. How could you let this happen? I didn't let it happen, Arthur roared, advancing on her. He was senile. She poisoned him against me. Oh, shut up, Chloe spat, and her cruelty was a revelation. He wasn't senile. He saw you. He saw you, Arthur, a weak, preening, arrogant fool who couldn't even keep his own company safe. And you were so stupid, so blinded by this, she gestured to her own body, that you divorced the one person who had all the cards. She looked at the shopping bags, her rage finding a new target. All this, it's nothing. It's fake. She grabbed a large Gucci hat box and hurled it at the wall. Chloe, stop. Calm down, Arthur begged, grabbing her arm. We can fix this. I'll hire lawyers. I'll contest the will. She ripped her arm from his grasp and delivered the kill shot, the one that echoed his own father's logic. With what money, Arthur? She sneered. Her face was ugly, contorted with contempt. With your $25,000, you can't even pay for this room. You have nothing. You are nothing. You're a failure. You're a pathetic failure, and your own father knew it. She was marching to the bedroom now, pulling his Rimowa suitcases from the closet. She tore clothes from the drawers, not folding, just stuffing. What are you doing? He asked, his voice cracking. The panic was real now, a cold hand gripping his heart. I'm leaving you, she said, not even looking at him. She was grabbing jewelry, stuffing it into a velvet pouch. I didn't sign up for this. I didn't give up my 20s to be with some poor person. Gave up, he sputtered. I gave you everything. That watch, the car, the apartment I was getting you, that's all from me. No, it wasn't, she rounded on him, her eyes blazing. It was from Grayson Holdings, and she just cut you off. You're not Arthur Grayson, CEO. You're just Arthur. And just Arthur is a broke, middle-aged loser with a bad divorce. She zipped the last bag. She pulled her coat on, grabbed her purse. Chloe, please, he begged, a pathetic sound. He blocked the door. Don't leave me. We can go somewhere. We can start over. She looked at him, and for a second he thought he saw a flicker of something. But it was just pity, and pity was worse than the hate. Start over, with what I'm not going to be living in some suburban apartment watching you try to get a job in middle management. I'm Chloe. I'm meant for more than that. She pushed past him. He didn't have the strength to stop her. She paused at the door of the suite, her hand on the handle. By the way, she said, a final venomous twist of the knife. The suite, the champagne, all those bags I bought today. The card you gave me was declined an hour ago. Arthur's stomach dropped. They called me from the Cartier on 5th, in front of everyone. They said the corporate account was frozen. I had to put the $100,000 freedom bracelet on hold. She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You're not just broke, Arthur. You're a liar. And you're a joke. She opened the door. Wait, Chloe. Where will you go? She looked back at him over her shoulder, her face cold and set. I don't know. But I'll land on my feet. I always do. You, on the other hand, she gestured around the opulent, trashed suite. Good luck with the bill. She was gone. The heavy door clicked shut, the sound echoing the final definitive closing of his life. He was alone. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hiss of the melting ice in the champagne bucket. The bubbles were gone. He stood there for 10 minutes, maybe an hour. He didn't know. Then the phone on the console table rang its shrill electronic tone, making him jump. He stared at it. It rang again. He picked it up. "Mr. Grayson." It was the voice of the hotel's night manager. Smooth professional, but with an underlying chill. "Yes?" "Sir, we seem to be having an issue with the corporate card on file for your suite and incidental charges. The Grayson Holdings Amex has been declined." "That's a mistake," Arthur said, his voice automatic. "Run it again." "We have, sir, 3 times. The account has been suspended by the administrator. We also attempted to charge your personal American Express Centurion card, which was also declined for a charge of this size." Of course it was. Its credit line was vast, but the hotel bill, coupled with Chloe's rampage, was well into 6 figures. He didn't have that in liquid cash. It was all tied to his stock, his old stock. "Mr. Grayson," the manager's voice was firm now, "we must ask you to come down to the front desk to settle your account immediately. We cannot extend any more credit." This was the end. He was going to be arrested, thrown out of the St. Regis for non-payment. The humiliation was a physical sickness rising in his throat. I have a check," he stammered, his mind grasping at the last straw. "My inheritance. 25,000. I can wire it." A pause. The manager was doing the math. "Sir, your current outstanding bill is 114,820 £. Arthur collapsed onto the settee, the phone falling from his ear. He was in debt. He didn't even have his inheritance. He was negative. "Mr. Grayson, sir, we will have to send security up." "No," Arthur shouted into the phone. "Don't. I'm sorting it. I have to make a call." He hung up. He was shaking. He had one last, terrible option. He pulled out the business card Mr. Davies had given him. Not for Davies, for the junior associate. His hands trembled as he dialed. It was answered on the first ring. "Miss Grayson's temporary legal office. How may I help you?" "This is Arthur Grayson." His name tasted like ash. I need to accept the settlement. The $25,000. I need it wired immediately." "1 moment, sir." The voice was coolly efficient. "Ah, yes. I see the file. I'm afraid that's not possible." "What?" Arthur's voice was a panicked whisper. "What do you mean?" "It's my inheritance, according to Mr. Davies's instructions, sir. That bequest is contingent upon your signing the final release papers, which also acknowledge your awareness of the no contest clause. A messenger is being dispatched to your location now with the documents. Once we have the signed and notarized papers, the funds will be released, which can take 2 to 3 business days." "I don't have 2-3 business days," he screamed. "I need it now." "I'm afraid that is the process, sir." The voice was a robot. A knock came at the door. Not a polite rap. A firm, authoritative thud. Arthur froze. "He's here. The messenger. He's here." "Excellent. Please sign all documents. The messenger is also a notary. He will wait." Click. The line went dead. Thud. 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 "Mr. Grayson Hotel Security, and a gentleman for here to see you." Arthur walked to the door, his legs feeling like they were moving through wet concrete. He opened it. 2 large hotel security guards stood there, along with a thin, unimpressed man in a bike messenger's outfit, holding a thick, waterproof legal envelope. "Mr. Grayson," the head of security said, his voice flat. "We need you to settle your bill. Now." "Here," the messenger said, thrusting the envelope at him. "Sign. I'll wait." Arthur took the envelope. He turned, walked to the bar, and tore it open. It was exactly what the associate had said. A full release, a waiver of all future claims, an acknowledgement of the will's validity. And then he saw the other pages. It wasn't just a release. It was a settlement offer. He stared, his blood turning to ice. It was a summary from Deloitte, the forensic audit. It was all there in cold, black and white print. Embezzlement, $2.1 million via Cayman Shell Corp., CR Holdings. Funds diverted to Ms. Chloe Randall for consulting services. Wire fraud, $1.2 million approved via CFO. Barnes unauthorized acquisition funds. Misappropriation of corporate assets, $550,000. Purchase of unregistered art jewelry, and one Aston Martin Vantage. The list went on. Total outstanding civil liability, 8 holes, 415, £200, £100. He looked up. The security guards were watching him. The messenger was checking his phone, bored. He read the attached letter. It was on crisp, heavy cardstock, with a new, elegant letterhead. Eleonora Grayson. Chairwoman, Grayson Holdings. Her signature wasn't the looping, soft Ellie he remembered. It was a sharp, decisive E. Grayson. The letter was short. It outlined that the company was prepared to file a civil suit to reclaim the $8.4 million. It also noted that these findings were of significant interest to the SEC and the New York District Attorney's Office. However, in recognition of your previous familial relationship, the letter read, Ms. Grayson is prepared to offer a one-time settlement. The deal Arthur would sign over his entire $25,000 bequest to the St. Regis to partially cover his personal debts. He would also sign over the deed to his one remaining personal asset, a condo in Miami he'd bought before his marriage. In exchange, Grayson Holdings would consider the $4 million civil debt settled and would defer reporting its criminal findings to the relevant authorities pending Mr. Grayson's full and future cooperation on all matters. It wasn't a settlement. It was a leash. She wasn't just taking his money. She was taking his future. She was letting him walk free, but she was holding the key to his prison cell. If he ever spoke out, ever contested, ever became an inconvenience, she could and would destroy him utterly. Sir, the security guard said, stepping into the room. We're out of time. Arthur looked at the letter. He looked at the audit. He looked at the pen the messenger was now holding out for him. He had no choice. He had been so comprehensively, so masterfully checkmated by his father, by his lawyers, and by the boring little wife he had discarded like trash. He took the pen. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely write. He signed. He signed away his inheritance. He signed away his condo. He signed away his pride. He signed away his freedom. Initial here and here, the messenger said, pointing. Arthur did. The messenger took the papers, sealed them, and left. Now, sir, the security guard said, the $25,000 from the estate will be wired to cover a portion of your bill. For the remainder, we will have to seize your personal effects as collateral. What? Arthur looked up, horrified. Your watch, sir. Your cufflinks. Any other items of value. They will be held against the outstanding £820, 100 up, until you can arrange payment. Arthur stared at the man. Then slowly, numbly, he unclasped his Patek Philippe. The watch his father had given him. He handed it over. He took off his cufflinks, his signet ring. "You have 1 hour to pack your bags and vacate the premises," the guard said, his voice devoid of all sympathy. Arthur Grayson, the man who was meant to inherit the world, was left alone in the ruins of his celebration suite, with nothing but a suitcase, a few $1,000s, in a checking account he couldn't access, and the crushing absolute and permanent knowledge of his own defeat. While Arthur was imploding, Eleonora was working. She moved into Julian's penthouse, a glass-walled fortress above the city. She didn't throw out his things. She lived with them. She used his desk, his library. She found the sealed manila envelope Mr. Davies had given her, Julian's private directives. It wasn't a business plan. It was a letter. "My dearest Ellie," it began. "If you are reading this, I am gone, and the first part of my plan is complete. You are now in charge. Do not be afraid. You are smarter than he ever was. You have a kindness he lacks, but you also have a steel he never saw." The letter went on for pages. He outlined the company's weaknesses, the executives he'd never trusted, the divisions that were bloated, the opportunities he'd been too ill to pursue. He'd been training her all those nights, talking about the business disguised as idle chatter. He knew. He had been preparing her for this. "Your first move," he wrote, "is the audit. Use it. It will show you who was loyal to me and who was loyal to Arthur's credit card. Do not be merciful with them, Ellie. They are a cancer. Cut them out. Then promote from within. Find the people Arthur overlooked." And so she did. Her first board meeting was a bloodbath. The room was filled with Arthur's cronies, men who had been patting him on the back for months. They saw her, this quiet woman in a simple dress, and assumed she was a figurehead. They assumed they could control her. "Ms. Grayson," one of them, a CFO named Barnes, said patronizingly, "we are all deeply sorry for the situation. Perhaps the best course of action is for you to appoint an interim CEO myself, perhaps while you get accustomed to your new position." Ellie slid the audit report to the center of the table. "Mr. Barnes," she said, her voice carrying in the silent room. "According to this, you signed off on $1.2 million in consulting fees to a Cayman Islands corporation, the same one my ex-husband used to buy his mistress a condominium. Were you incompetent, or were you an accomplice?" The color drained from Barnes's face. She went down the line. One by one, a vice president of acquisitions who had sold company land to a shell company he secretly owned, a head of logistics who was taking kickbacks. By the end of the hour, she had fired 4 senior executives, accepted the resignations of 3 others, and frozen their severance. The boring wife had a spine of pure cold steel. In the months that followed, Ellie Grayson disappeared and Ms. Grayson emerged. She was ruthless, efficient, and surprisingly brilliant. She promoted a young analyst Arthur had always ridiculed. She reinvested in the shipping fleet. She cut the vanity projects, including Arthur's sponsorship of Chloe's influencer lifestyle. The company, which had been stagnant under Arthur's shadow reign, began to thrive. The stock rose. Forbes and the Wall Street Journal ran profiles: the accidental heiress, the Iron Widow. 6 months after the will reading, Ellie was attending a charity gala, one she now funded. She was descending the marble staircase when she saw him. It was Arthur. He was wearing an ill-fitting suit. He was working. He was a low-level events coordinator for the hotel, holding a clipboard, checking in guests. Their eyes met. The smugness was gone. The arrogance, the power, all of it had evaporated. He just looked old, beaten. He stared at her, at the woman wearing a simple, elegant navy gown, her head held high, surrounded by people who respected and slightly feared her. He saw the woman he had thrown away. He saw the power she wielded, the power that should have been his. He saw the woman his father had always seen. Ellie didn't smile. She didn't sneer. She simply held his gaze for a single devastating moment. Then she looked right through him, as if he were nothing but a ghost, and continued down the stairs to her new life. And so, Eleonora Grayson stepped into the future her father-in-law always knew she deserved. Arthur learned the hard way that loyalty is a currency you can't afford to counterfeit, and karma always collects its debts. Chloe vanished a footnote in a story of her own failed ambition, last seen working at a clothing boutique in Miami. Eleonora, leading Grayson Holdings to new heights, proved that true strength isn't about the noise you make, but the quiet, unshakable foundation you build. The ultimate revenge wasn't in ruin, but in rising. What did you think of Eleonora's story? When do you think Arthur truly realized his mistake? Was it at the will reading or when he saw her at the gala? Let us know in the comments below. Your support is everything to this channel. If you enjoyed this dramatic story, please give this video a like, share it with a friend who needs to see that karma is real, and be sure to subscribe for more intense real-life stories every single week. We'll see you in the next one.